being said over this computer is being recorded by video and audio. So if you need to communicate a message to Ms. Blinn, what you're going to do is give me a signal, wave your hand or something, and I'll stop and I'll ask what is it you need. If you need to talk to your lawyer, that's all you need to say on the record. I'll either put you guys back in a breakout room, or I'll give you an opportunity to do that before she asks questions or when the meeting's over, okay? But don't just blurt stuff out, because it's not just her that can hear you. All of us can hear you, and it's all being recorded. Do you understand?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, Ms. Blinn, you agreed or requested to have this probable cause hearing pursuant to the executive order or the judicial emergency orders of the Supreme Court. We're obviously not allowed to have certain types of hearings in person at this time. So you were requested to have a probable cause hearing by video conference. Is that correct?
I did, Judge. This hearing was originally scheduled for March 18th, which was very shortly after the emergency order was signed and filed. So we've been just waiting for it to get back on the calendar.
Okay, and so you're agreeing to proceed by the video conferencing at this point?
Yes, Judge, and I did make that request.
Okay, and state's agreeing to also proceed with the probable cause hearing by video?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let me see here. I'll just make sure we have Detective Limber ready to go. And court reporter, you can hear us okay? Okay, this is the probable cause hearing. The case is State of Georgia versus Mr Mckenzie. Mr. Mckenzie is present with his attorney, Ms. Blinn. There are two warrants. Warrant number 20W03239. That's one count of felony murder, and 20W03240, which is one count of aggravated assault. Ms. Blinn, do you waive formal reading of the warrant?
We do.
All right, and you're ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay, state's ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can proceed.
Would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before this court be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
And would you please state your name for the court?
Corporal C.J. Limber,
And where do you work, sir?
Gwinnett County Police Department in the Homicide Assault Unit.
How long have you worked for the Gwinnett County Police Department?
14 years.
And are you post-certified?
I am, ma'am.
And did you have an opportunity to come in contact with Mr Mckenzie?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and did you see Mr. Mckenzie earlier?
Earlier that.
Did you see Mr. Mckenzie the day that that all this that you investigated this?
I did.
Okay, and did you see the same person in the virtual courtroom today?
Yes, ma'am. He's dressed in a green jumpsuit.
Okay, and you're the person who took out these warrants, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell us how you came to take out those warrants, please?
On March 3rd, 2020, approximately, I believe it was 5:45 in the morning, the police department received a phone call in reference to a person that was down. Officers arrived. They noticed a female with a lot of trauma around her, a lot of blood. She had no signs of life. They checked her pulse. There was no pulse. They continued in the house, did a safety sweep. They located two young children, 8-year-old twins upstairs, relocated those children to a nearby police car. I was contacted due to the victim being deceased at that point. Myself and other members of the homicide unit went out to the apartment.
Where is that located?
It's located in Gwinnett County. I want to say it was, let's see. I had the address. 2652 Harrington Woods Court.
Okay, and that is in Gwinnett County, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. Unincorporated Lawrenceville.
Okay, thank you. And continue.
Myself, other members of the homicide unit went out there to conduct the investigation into the homicide. When I arrived, I noticed a deceased female laying halfway in the doorway and halfway out of the doorway towards the exterior of the condo. There was a large amount of blood, kitchen, hallway, on the door. Noticed what appeared to be a stab wound to her chest. At that time, we could not manipulate the body, so I was not able to see other wounds that she had sustained. However, when the ME arrived, they manipulated the body, was able to see further what looked to be stab wounds on her neck, her chest, and I believe it was 7 stab wounds that she ultimately sustained. We began the investigation into this. The 2 8-year-olds were interviewed by detectives or Corporal Smith at that time. They said that their mom had a friend over at that point, and that's really all they're.
I'm sorry, Detective, but I don't mean to interrupt you. I don't think we've mentioned the victim's name at all yet.
It's Julian Miles Walters.
Okay, thank you. Continue. I apologize for the interruption.
No, you're fine. The twins were interviewed by Corporal Smith. They kind of provided some light as to their mother had a boyfriend, I guess you could say, that would come over, but they were 8 years old, so we weren't really able to get enough information out of them. We began doing a history on the address, looking up previous domestics, anything else like that. Right around that point in the investigation, we received a phone call. Actually, Corporal Smith received a phone call from Mr. McKenzie's aunt. Mr. McKenzie's aunt explained that he called her and told her that he killed his wife and his girlfriend in Gwinnett County. She was worried about him. He was having suicidal threats. And during that conversation, she said that he was being pulled over. We learned that the Dunwoody Police Department pulled Mr. McKenzie over in a white vehicle. When he was pulled over, he was, to put it lightly, he was covered head to toe in blood. He did have a laceration on his left hand that was bleeding, I would say profusely, but he also had blood on the top of his jacket, and the wound that he received to his hand did not match the blood that was on top of his jacket. When officers pulled him over, he said that he cut himself. They were, I guess you could say, questioning him as to his cut, why there was so much blood. There was blood on the exterior of the car. There was a large amount of blood. Paramedics came over. They asked him what happened. He did mumble to them, it's mostly he believed, on his clothes. And then he later recanted that statement to the paramedics. All of this was caught on the Dunwoody Police Department officer's body camera. He did have an outstanding warrant from Newton County for a homicide that actually occurred. We later found out after this homicide. So we had our homicide, the Newton County had a homicide. They were able to develop their probable cause faster than we were. They were able to get a warrant. They detained him. He was brought to the Gwinnett County Police Department for subsequent interview. When he was brought down there, the vehicle was towed. I was informed by the Dunwoody Police Department, as well as our officers, that a large knife was found in his car as well, and it was covered in blood. It was an 8-inch time and table, I guess, chef's knife is a accurate description of it. Covered in blood. There were some empty beer cans in the vehicle. When he was brought to the Gwinnett County Police Department, I interviewed a boyfriend who was actually at the scene when Mr. McKenzie entered the residence. The witness basically said that him and Julian were sitting on the couch, or they were sleeping. And while they were sleeping, he wakes up. He sees a large male dressed in dark clothing with, he believed, plaid pants on, standing over Julian. How can I explain it? He was scared. He ran from the scene, but he said as he was running through the sliding glass back door where the couch was located near, he heard her say, "Oh, you're going to stab me. You're going to stab me," is what the last thing you heard Julian say. He gave us a description of Mr. McKenzie. The witness also said that as he was running out of the apartment complex, he didn't have his cell phone on him. and he saw the suspect get into the vehicle. Mr. McKenzie saw him get into a white vehicle, which he described as a white Lexus,
And
and
I'm
saw
sorry.
him leave the apartment
Hold
complex.
on, Detective Limber, I think last thing we heard was he described, and then the video
Cut
kind
out.
of cut out. So start back
Okay.
from he described.
So the witness described Mr. McKenzie. He gave us his description earlier on in the stage of the investigation. When you compare that description to the body camera, he matches that description. The clothing description that the witness gave of the suspect, he said that he believed like plaid pants on. However, Mr. McKenzie had a plaid jacket. So given I guess the violent encounter that the witness had and seeing everything, he was only able to recall that much. Later found out Mr. McKenzie, when he was brought up to the headquarters, that he had a pair of keys on him. One of those keys, we found out that it unlocked Julian's apartment. So he had access to her apartment. There was no forced entry, so that would be able to explain why there was no forced entry. When Mr. McKenzie was interviewed, Retta Miranda, the Newton County investigator, Almond was in there with me. He was Red Miranda. Mr. McKenzie agreed to speak with me, and during our very brief interview, I asked him about his clothes. I said, "Where are your clothes?" He goes, "Well, they took my clothes." "Why'd they take your clothes?" And he said that mostly it was his blood on his clothes. It was mostly his blood on the clothes. And then at that point, he invoked his right. Interview ceased at that point. If you can't hear, it's starting to rain, so if you can't hear me, let me know. He invoked his right, and the interview ceased immediately. Through the course of the investigation, a secondary search warrant was done at the location of the homicide. During that secondary search warrant, we located a knife set of time and table, and it was the same knife set or the same name brand that was found in Mr. McKenzie's vehicle. We've located two knives, 3 sheaths. The one sheath that we found that was empty, that there was no knife to, is actually the sheath that Mr. McKenzie had in his vehicle. At that point, there was no other evidence that was found during that secondary search warrant.
So the wife and the girlfriend are not the same person, is that right?
Correct. It's 2 separate homicides within an hour of each other, roughly.
Okay, and the wife was the murder in Newton County, is that correct? Okay.
This is the girlfriend.
Okay, just trying to make sure that we, and all the interview or partial interview that you did with defendant was recorded?
It was audio and video.
Okay, and he was picked up by Dunwoody Police, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and the body cam from that occurrence is in evidence?
It's, the Axon, evidence.com, and Dunwoody also has the original of it.
Okay, and the clothes and the knife and all that stuff was taken into evidence?
Yes, all the evidence pertaining to the clothes, the knife, the swabs, everything was placed into evidence.
And was a patch of the clothing sent to the GBI?
Yes, all the serology from the blood on the evidence was all sent off to the GBI, and we're still awaiting results from that.
Okay. And obviously crime scene was out there, took photos.
Yes, ma'am.
And you spoke with the boyfriend of the victim, is that correct?
I did.
The defendant did he see the defendant with a knife, or did he just hear her saying something about stabbing her?
He heard her say something about stabbing her. He didn't see anything. He said when he saw the vehicle leaving the apartment complex, he actually tried to confront the vehicle with Mr. McKenzie in it. And as he said, he tried to stop the male from leaving, or the suspect from leaving. The suspect got out of the vehicle, Mr. McKenzie holding a knife. The witness said at that point he fled again. So he left because he was afraid of him, basically.
Okay. And in between all that, he didn't go back into the apartment to see if anything had happened. He just had run out and then saw the defendant getting in his car and leaving.
Right. So he went back to the apartment, asked the neighbor to summon for help. That's who called 911. They were given instructions to place a blanket on Jillian to stop the bleeding, but she was deceased at that point.
Okay, so the boyfriend went to the neighbor and said, hey, we got to call 911, and that's who called 911. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, so the boyfriend had actually seen her on the floor. Where was she found, her body?
If you're looking at the building, it's a condo. It's a multi-family condo. There's a front door. It's 2-story. Her top of her body, left from her waist up to her head, was out of the doorway going towards the exterior of the condo, and her feet were in the interior of the condo.
Okay, so she's lying in the doorway.
Correct. Her hands were, it was kind of like she was, I don't know if you can see it, but she was kind of like this in the pictures.
Okay, so she had her hands like over her head. Is that what yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's hard to do in this small box, but yeah, her hands were to where we can see them.
Okay. And was she face down or face up?
She was face up. Well, she was face up with her head tilted to the left. She did have a broken fingernail. That fingernail was actually located on the countertop, and it was collected by CSI. We actually sent that off to the GBI for DNA as well. Mr. Mckenzie did have some what looked to be defensive wounds on his arm and head.
Okay, but did he ever say where or when he got those, or?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
We did not get that. The interview was very brief.
Okay. And you said that the Newton County incident happened maybe an hour before this particular incident?
It actually happened after, we determined.
Oh, so Newton County happened after this?
Correct.
Okay.
The CDR information, when I got the cell phone data records, it showed the GPS coordinates of him being at that location around the time of the homicide and then going to Newton County.
Okay. I don't have anything further at this moment.
Okay.
Corporal, you indicated that the 911 call was originally made by a neighbor who the boyfriend had gone to tell him or her to call police. Did that person have any personal knowledge or see anything or provide any kind of a statement?
No, ma'am.
What is that boyfriend's name, the one who was actually present?
The boyfriend's name, let me make sure that I have it. It's Derek Pruitt.
And was Mr. Pruitt familiar, or did he know Arif Mckenzie? Had he ever seen him before or indicated that he had?
He was not familiar with Mr. McKenzie.
Okay.
You could use the term boyfriend lightly with Mr. Pruitt. He's known Jillian, I guess, a couple years ago, and they recently, prior to the homicide, recently connected, is what he said.
Okay, and his statement and I think you said, who did the interview with him? Was it you or was it Corporal Smith or Detective Smith?
It was myself. It was audio and video recorded.
Okay. And he indicated he was just spending the night. They were both asleep on the couch.
So he went over there that night, and he said prior to falling asleep, they were drinking. He said that he fell asleep with her on the couch, and then he woke up he said a large black male was standing over him, and he said he became frightened and fled.
Okay. And you indicated you responded approximately 5:45 in the morning. Was he able to give you a time frame as to when the incident actually occurred? Was it just a few minutes before the 911 call was placed?
No, through the interviews and looking at the CAD call, it was roughly around that time, because he called, so it was probably maybe several minutes beforehand, because he left the residence, went out to the front, confronted the car, then came back, and then the 911 call was placed.
Okay, but there wasn't any delay between the time that he said he originally fled the apartment and the time that the 911 call was placed. It was a matter of minutes.
Yeah, it was probably maybe 5-10 minutes.
Okay, and your understanding is that the 8-year-old twins were upstairs in the apartment or in the location, didn't see anything?
Correct. So when I reviewed the officer's body camera, they actually, during the safety sweep, they went up there, located the twins, and they were completely passed out. The officers actually had to wake them up physically to get them up.
Okay, so as far as you know, they didn't see anything, hear anything, didn't see their mother in distress, didn't have to hear her call out to them or hear her say anything to them?
No, ma'am.
And when you say that mom had a boyfriend over, she was actually the children were actually referring to Derek, right? The guy who was sleeping on the couch.
No, they weren't referring to Derek. I think they referred to him as like a friend. They know Mr. Mckenzie, but
Okay.
they didn't indicate that he was over there that night.
Okay. All right. So they didn't say they saw somebody or they saw Mr. Mckenzie or any of that.
Correct. I believe they went to bed around, the time frame was between 7:30 and 8, and then Mr. Pruitt came over.
Okay. You indicated that there was a fingernail that was collected that was sent for DNA testing. Any other DNA test pending? I assume the clothing that was recovered from Mr. Mckenzie.
So the clothing, the fingernail, swabs from the scene, swabs from the vehicle, Mr. Mckenzie's DNA, a search warrant was obtained. We got his DNA.
When was that done?
The same day of the homicide. There's multiple other pieces of evidence as well that was sent off to the GBI.
Okay. I assume the weapon was collected. Where's the vehicle now? Is it still with Dunwoody, or was that eventually taken? Did you guys take it over to process it, or?
No, so the day of the homicide, that vehicle was towed to the Gwinnett County Police Department.
Okay.
I later conducted a search warrant on that vehicle, and it was released to, I guess it was actually a leased vehicle, like a courtesy vehicle, and that was released back to the owner.
Okay.
Like the dealership.
Okay. And the interaction as far as the traffic stop, and I think you indicated it was all on body cam statements that Mr. Mckenzie made at the time. Were there any reports or anything prepared by the first responders or the EMTs who treated him in conjunction with the Dunwoody stop?
So the EMTs, it's AMR.
Okay.
It's fairly difficult to get in contact with the paramedics, but the Dunwoody Police Department, they did actually they wrote him 2 citations, and I want to say that they completed a report.
Okay. Do you have that report, or will you have that report?
I will have that report.
Okay. Was Mr. Mckenzie, was he taken for medical treatment at all for the lacerations?
He was. Directly after the traffic stop was made, the paramedics came on scene. They determined that he needed stitches, and he was taken to Northside for Side.
Okay. Was there anybody there that asked for any information or took any statements from him?
So the officers who went there was the initial officer who pulled him over. And then there was, we had one of our officers go up to the hospital, and both officers were equipped with body cameras.
Okay.
And there was no statement.
Okay. Other than Mr. Pruitt and the twins, were there any other lay witnesses, anybody who saw anything or heard
No, ma'am.
anything at the apartments?
No, ma'am.
Was there any kind of a canvas done? Hey, did you hear anything, see anything?
We did conduct a canvass, and there was no witnesses. We even talked to the people that were next door, see if they heard anything loud, and they said they didn't hear anything.
How about video? Sometimes they'll have video cameras in the parking lot, anything like that. Did you talk to the manager there at the apartment complex?
No, ma'am, there's no video.
And can you give me a timeline approximately? We're talking about around 5:30, 5:45 a.m. When did the stop happen by Dunwoody Police?
I believe it was 10:15 in the morning.
10:15?
Yes, ma'am.
And when is Newton County's case? Approximately what time frame are they talking about in the Newton County case?
Newton's was around 7 in the morning.
And to your knowledge, other than the Newton County detective that sat in with you, have they conducted or attempted to conduct any other interviews with Mr. Mckenzie?
Not to my knowledge.
Have they gathered any evidence that has become part of your case?
No, they primarily have been using most of the evidence that I've gotten off my case.
Okay. Okay, so there's nothing additionally that they gathered at their scene that has become part of the Gwinnett County investigation?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So no photographs or video or anything along those lines?
No, the only thing that I know from the Newton County case is it was his wife. He was separated from his wife because of a TPO. And they kind of walked me through that, but that has no relevance to this.
Okay. Well, I'm just wondering as far as description or
yeah.
clothing or anything along those lines, whether that's...
No, they didn't provide a description or clothing. They basically said that the witness on their case was familiar with Mr. Mckenzie, and they were able to give him basically by name.
Okay. I believe that is all I have right now, Corporal. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Olden, do you have any additional questions?
I just have one. Did the twins tell anybody anything about arguments between Mr. Mckenzie and the victim?
No, the twins, from working the victim background of the case, Jillian was very cognizant of keeping the twins separated from men that she knew coming to the house. And she didn't really feel comfortable, I guess, with them being around Mr. Mckenzie.
Okay, so they knew who he was, but they didn't know anything about him or their relationship.
Correct.
That's all the questions I have, Judge.
Okay, any follow-up, Ms. Flynn?
No, Judge.
Okay, any additional witnesses?
Not for the state, ma'am.
Okay, can we release Detective Limber?
Yes, Judge.
All right, thank you, Detective. You're free to go. Any witnesses or evidence from the defense, Ms. Flynn?
No evidence, Judge. We'd submit.
Okay. State submits?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Based on the testimony I've heard, I do find there is sufficient probable cause to bind these two charges over. So I'm binding them over as they're listed in the warrant. Mr. Mckenzie, Ms. Blinn will be in touch with you to talk to you about next steps and what you can anticipate, and give you an update on when she expects courts to be open for physical hearings and what's going to happen next, okay?
Judge, I told him we'd schedule a video conference on Monday, so I'll talk with you on Monday.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Judge.
Thanks, Ms. Blinn.
Be well.
All right, you too.
Bye, Marianne.
Bye, Marlene.
Okay, so that's going to move us to Mr. Lewis's cases. So let me unmute and restart video of Officer Smith and Detective Carter. All right. Okay, so Detective Carter, Detective Smith, we've got, both of you have Mr. Lewis as the attorney, and they, I'm not sure which defendant they're gonna bring into the video room, and which one, Mr. Lewis is perfect. I'm here. You need one copy or two?
It's either gonna be McFarland or Amaya. So if the interpreter's there,
Well, yeah, because we've got an interpreter for one and we've got a court reporter for the other.
Which is gonna be the first one like for lunch.
6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. We got to pay somebody to be here. I mean, because we've got an interpreter for one and
The
court
interpreter's
reporter.
tied up in the other courtroom.
Oh, the interpreter's tied up right now, so I
Yeah,
guess we'll go with the
the
murder.
interpreter's tied up. So yeah, McFarland. Yeah, thanks.
So that would be McFarland and Detective Smith. Sorry, Detective Carter.
Okay.
Gotta get you to wait again.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I'll make you these copies.
There you go.
There's nobody. Okay.
Let's see. You want to see the screen? If you have any questions, write them down. Yeah. Don't touch the computer. Just write whatever questions you have. Just write them questions down.
Okay. There's Mackenzie. All right, let me stop that. Let me do a new bookmark.
If you have a question, you can just write that down.
This is the probable cause hearing. This is the case of State of Georgia versus, is it Anthony McFarland? Mr. McFarland is present with his attorney via video conference. Mr. Lewis, do you waive proceeding in person and accept proceeding with this hearing by video?
Yes, Judge.
Okay, state also waives?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, we have Detective Smith present. Warrant numbers are 20W05115, ag assault, and 20W05116, felony murder. Mr. Lewis, do you waive formal reading of the warrants?
Yes, Judge. Thank you.
You ready to proceed?
Yes.
Okay. State's ready?
Judge, I can't see Corporal Smith.
I can see him.
I don't know what happened. Or
Do you have it on speaker view or what do you?
maybe this will help. Oh, there he is.
Okay. You see him? Okay.
Okay.
We're ready when you are.
Okay. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before this court be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Do.
Okay, and would you please state your name for the record?
Detective David Smith,
And where do you work, sir?
Gwinnett County Police Homicide Unit,
How long have you worked for the police department?
9 years.
Are you post-certified?
I am.
And did you come in contact with Anthony McFarland?
I did.
And do you see that person present within this video call?
I do. He's seated next to Mr. Lewis in a green suit.
Okay. And you took out the warrants in this matter, is that correct?
I did.
Can you tell us how you came to take out those warrants, please?
Sure. I was called out on Monday, April 6th of this year to 2423 Northbrook Road in unincorporated Snellville, that's in Gwinnett County. We received a 911 call from the victim, Natasha Smith's son, Tayshawn Magic. He called into 911 and said that he had located his mother in the backyard, that she was naked and she had been hurt. Didn't look like she was breathing. Short time after that, and the second call came into the 911 center from the defendant, stating that he had located the victim in the backyard naked and she was also not breathing. Throughout that 911 call, he eventually said it looked like she had been shot and that he had covered her up with a blanket. Officers responded to the scene. They separated the kids that were in the home for us to speak to. When I got there, I first spoke to Tayshawn. Tayshawn explained that he had went to bed about 5 a.m. that morning. He had been playing Xbox all night. He stated the defendant came into his room around 10 a.m. and asked him to help clean up the backyard. He said he thought it was weird, but then the defendant told him to wait, that he'd come back to him. He next heard from the defendant around 4 something, where he came in and asked him again to come help clean up, or said they were going to be cleaning up the backyard. The defendant left again, and then it was around 6 something that the defendant finally came in, and Tayshawn got up and went out with him again on, I believe, the 3rd request to go clean up the backyard. When he said he got up to the backyard, he thought that they were going to go move the trash from the side of the house out to the road. He said no. He told him that had already been done. The defendant had told Tayshawn that it had already been done, that they were going to the backyard to clean up. He said he walked behind the defendant down the steps in the back, and when he looked over, he could see a naked body laying under the patio. The way that it's laid out is you have a deck, and then there's a concrete pad directly below that with access to the basement. She was located on that concrete pad. He said he saw what was going on. He walked over there with the defendant. The defendant told him to call 911. Tayshawn said he had his phone in his pocket, so he went around to the front of the house and called 911 to wait on paramedics. We then spoke with, Corporal Huggins spoke with the daughter, who is 10 years old. Tayshawn is 14. Then he spoke with Talia, who is 10 years old. The daughter, she said the last time she had saw the mom was around midnight the night before, and that she had not seen her at all that morning. And again, the 911 call came in at 6:40 p.m. on the 6th.
That's the one from Tayshawn that came in at 6:40?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Talia had not seen her mom since around midnight the night before on Sunday, coming into Monday. She's the only thing that she mentioned that there had been some arguments over a cell phone before between the defendant and the victim, but she did not know if it was the night before or the Saturday previous. There was another child there, Jalen. He suffers from some mental disorders, so he was not really able to speak with us. He's 9 years old. We went to talk to the defendant. We asked him if he would agree to come to Gwinnett County Police Headquarters to speak with us. Sorry, I got allergies. He agreed to come up there on his own free will. When we got to police headquarters, he wanted to smoke outside. We got him something to eat and drink. We talked to him outside in an audio recorded interview. He stated that he and the victim had been dancing and smoking weed the night before. They went to bed around 1 a.m. They began to have sex for most of the night. He said she got up around 7 a.m. and they continued to have sex throughout the morning. At some point, they agreed that she was going to cook catfish and grits for breakfast. That she went to go do that, and he went outside to work on his Mercedes. He said at some point he texted her and told her that he was going to take it to the mechanic. He said he then went to the mechanic and he was there for 4 or 5 hours. He ended up having to leave the car, and that he was brought home by one of the mechanics. He said when he returned home around 4 something, he could not locate the victim. He was calling and texting her and still could not locate her. He found her glasses and I believe at some point found the cell phone in the house. He then went back to Tayshawn, asked him to go clean up, asked him if they mother. They said no. The children told us it was common that they don't leave their room until the mother lets them, that she doesn't like for them to come out of their room. He then returned and Tayshawn finally agreed to come outside around after 6 p.m. to go help him clean up, and that's when he said he discovered the victim for the first time. We did conduct some CSI at the scene that night. However, there was hardly any lighting. Also in the house, there was hardly any lighting. Most of the lights didn't work. It was very dark. So we had officers hold the scene all night until we could come back the next day in the daylight to continue processing. The defendant was let go that night. I did not believe there was probable cause at that time to keep him for any reason. He was taken to the hotel of his choice, where he got a family member to pay for the hotel. That day, also his car was brought up. It was located at Ted's garage that night, and it was brought up to get a search warrant on Tuesday. When Tuesday we got out, we went back to the house. We located some blood in the house on a sheet that was damp on the dryer. The mattress in the master bedroom had also been cut out, the front of it, and flipped over, and that part of the mattress was missing. We located a pair of 10.5 Jordan shoes that had blood on the bottom. Those matched bloody footprints around the victim's body that were marked into the concrete pad. After talking with the kids, we learned that those were the defendant's shoes. We then went to Ted's garage and spoke with them while we were there. They said he was only there for an hour, between 3 and 4, not 4 to 5 hours. They had it all on video. We reviewed the video surveillance. Shortly after being there, he removed a garbage bag from his car. He walked across the street and up into the woodline to where a retention pond is. There's a fence. You can only go about a yard in. And he exited there after about 10 minutes. He fell down the hill coming back out, and then was walking around. About 10 minutes later, the fire department shows up. The whole woodline was on fire up in that area where he had just come from, and he had come out without the garbage bag. The fire department and Snowville police put out the fire. We did go back up there to check to see if there was anything, but they dumped over 100 gallons of water on, so there was really nothing left. We did find the hot spot of where whatever was the bag, which we believe the bag was set on fire, was next to the fence at the very top of that hill. He was then driven home by a mechanic that we saw in the video. When he got home, we took his cell phone during the interview, and that was downloaded. When he gets back, he starts videoing everything, videoing the house, videoing himself asking the kids where their mom was, coming in and out of their room for about an hour and a half, asking if they knew where she was, if they had seen her. And then we eventually see him ask Tayshawn again at 6 something, where he gets up and comes outside with him. And then he ends the video before they go outside.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. So he starts videoing these conversations after he gets back from the mechanics, but there were no videos before.
He does video a lot of things. There were videos before, but not of anything where he's asking the kids where the mom's at or anything like that. We didn't see him trying to call the victim, where he had said he tried to call her. The last call was around 12 something. Mm-hmm. It went straight to voicemail. When I got into the victim's phone had been turned off at some point that morning. We believe the time of death is between 9 and 10 a.m. There's a video of the defendant videoing her in the bedroom at like around 9 a.m. where she's in the bedroom with him. And that's the last sign of life that we saw.
Okay.
When I turned her phone on at police headquarters to do the download on the phone, that is when all the one phone call and then the subsequent text messages throughout the day where the defendant had been texting her came to the phone, which shows us that she never received any of those messages. The phone had been turned off at some point that morning. We then spoke with the kids again. He had said that in the 911 call and in our interview, he had said that the child, the 14-year-old Tayshawn, may have had something to do with it. Throughout the day when he's videoing that morning, you can see that the kids are asleep in the bedroom around her time, what we believe to be her time of death. That afternoon, the kids were still in the bedroom. I have no evidence to show that Tayshawn had anything to do with it. He also accused the father of Tayshawn. The victim and the father, Johnny Magic, do have a tumultuous relationship. However, we do have co-workers in his business that told us where he was, and we were able to confirm he was not even in the county when this occurred, that he was called by Talia to come to the scene afterwards. Based on those facts and after processing the scene from the Ted's garage video and the bloody shoes, we also found other 10.5 pairs of shoes in the defendant's car, which led me to believe even more that those are his shoes. He wears a 10.5. Tayshawn wears a size 13. The defendant had something to do with the murder. I then took out those warrants, and he was arrested at the Gwinnett Inn where he had been staying the night before. We have sent all those items off to the GBI to be compared and to be tested. We did not find a weapon. She was shot 3 times, once press contact in the left temple, 1 press contact in the left hip, and there's a mid-range shot to her left abdomen just above the other shot in the hip. She does have drag marks or marks on her back and her arms that are consistent with being drug at distance. And again, she was found naked outside. So that would be consistent with her being drugged, most likely from somewhere inside the house. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, let me just.
Oh, sorry, one other thing. The defendant stated that they had been having sex all night long. However, in the video that morning, they were arguing. He was arguing with her about wanting to have sex with her, and she was denying him. And he was videoing that on his phone, that entire conversation.
Okay.
Which led me to believe that that's not what had occurred.
And was there anything else that you found on her phone that you thought might be significant?
Yes, so at between 9:06 and 9:07, so he had videoed her looking for a phone charger that morning. We know her phone was turned on around 8 a.m. It must have been dead. They were looking for a phone charger at some point during that morning. They were going to borrow Jalen's. I think in the video he's asking Jalen, or trying to wake Jalen up to see if he had the phone charger. Around 9 a.m. later that morning, the last thing that any activity on her phone was a Plenty of Fish account. That was accessed. On his phone, it sounded like she was in the kitchen around that time, cooking, which was consistent with what he had said, but her phone was accessing a Plenty of Fish account, where the last tabs that had been viewed were her profile and who was viewing her and her messages on that phone. But Plenty of Fish is a dating website.
Thank you for clearing that up. Okay. I don't think I have anything else at this particular moment.
Mr. Lewis, cross-examination?
Thank you, Judge. Detective Smith, good afternoon. Let me start here. Can you tell me the last outgoing message from the victim's phone, the time of the last outgoing message or text from the victim's phone?
I don't have it in front of me, but from my memory, it was sometime on Sunday when she had been texting the defendant when he was asking her where she was. She had gone out to purchase marijuana on her way home from work.
Okay, and did it say that she was purchasing marijuana or green or whatever you interpret to be marijuana?
I don't believe the message said that was his statement to me, is that's what she was doing.
Okay, so the morning of the 911 call, that morning, there are no outgoing messages, texts, or anything like that from her to anyone. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Tell me, and I was listening carefully, but I missed the part about the Plenty of Fish. Was the victim's phone accessing her account on Plenty of Fish?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, I got that. Now, based on 2 answers ago, where you say she was going to pick up some weed on her way home, did she have her own car?
She had a car that she was leasing from Lyft. She was also a Lyft driver.
Okay, good. So in my mind, she has her own car. Is her car located at the residence when the police arrived there?
It was later impounded the next day and searched as well. We didn't find anything in the car.
Okay, did you ask my client when he came in and made the statement if it was unusual for her car to be there and she not be there at the house?
He did. He said that was not normal. He even said that to the kids or in a text message that your car and your phone are here, asking where she could be.
Did the kids express that had ever happened before? That they come out the room, they're looking for their mom, her car is there, her purse is there, her cell phone is there, but she's nowhere to be found. Did they find that? Has that ever happened before?
They did not mention that. They did say in the video that the defendant was recording that they had tried to call her and it was going straight to voicemail.
Okay. You indicated that the victim was shot 3 times. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
The contact wound where the gun is placed up against her body, where was that shot?
There were 2 of those. One is in the left temple and then one is on her left hip.
Okay, and then the other one is a mid-range shot.
Correct. That one had stippling, which would have been maybe close but not right on, and that was just above the other one on the hip.
Okay, maybe less than a foot away.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and just based on your experience, obviously you've been an investigator for 9 years. I guess your estimate is that she was killed inside the house, dragged outside. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
No witnesses from outside see anybody dragging her outside. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. There's access to the backyard. There's a stairwell inside the home that goes to that
Okay.
basement pad outside.
Okay, nobody heard any shot at any time, is that right?
That's correct. No one heard anything.
Okay, no gun was located in the house or in my client's vehicle, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and although you indicated that there was a fire, law enforcement did go up and look in the area where they believed the trash was, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, nothing about the fire would have led you to believe that the fire would have melted the metal on a gun. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say, yes, sir. We
Okay,
don't believe that there was any metal in there.
Okay, and so no gun was found at that location, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. You talked about this mattress. There was a mattress, and you indicated that there was a piece of something cut out of the mattress. Is that right?
Yes, sir. If you're looking at it, I believe it's a queen size mattress. One side of, say, where one person would have slept, just that side had been cut out of it and flipped over.
Okay, and I'm trying to understand. Do you have a photo of it?
I did not with me, but photos were.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'm trying to understand when you say cut out. Like the surface level is cut out.
Correct. So there is the surface level, the padding, and then the springs, and then there's padding for the other side as well. So just the padding on the one side that goes down to the springs on that whole fabric.
Okay, good. And what's the size of the portion of the mattress that is cut out on the side where you can see the springs?
It would be what I believe to be consistent with the length of a person's body.
Okay, so you're talking about maybe 2 feet wide and 6 feet long.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was there any other blood on the mattress at all? I understand what's cut out is cut out. Is there any other blood on the springs? Was there luminol used that indicate that there was any other blood on the springs?
Yes, sir. We did examine the mattress. We did not see any blood on the springs or anything bled through to the other side.
Okay. The floor in the bedroom, was there any blood in the floor of the bedroom or any blood trail from the bedroom to where the body was found?
No, sir.
Okay. When either law enforcement or the emergency personnel arrive, when they first arrive, what is the victim covered with? I understand she's naked. What's she covered with?
She was covered up with what I describe as a moving blanket. If you're those heavier blue padded blankets, there was a large stack of them next to her body. The defendant said on the 911 call, he was asked to do CPR, and he said, "I'm going to cover her up with a blanket so the kids don't see her."
Okay, but as best you could tell, when you arrived, she was completely naked.
Yeah, the blanket had been removed by the time I got there by paramedics, but yeah, she did not have any clothes on, no socks, anything.
Okay, 1 second. So now, according to the mechanic, my client arrived at the mechanic shop about what time?
Around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and that was also on the video.
And according to the video, he was there from 3 to 4.
Yeah, I believe just a little bit after 4, and then he was given a ride home by one of the other mechanics.
Okay, and what time did that fire start?
I believe around 3:20 p.m.
3:20. And so my client was present at the auto mechanic shop when the firefighters were fighting that fire. Is that right?
He actually walked it down to the road and stood and watched them put the fire out.
Okay. The 14-year-old, I'm assuming he made a statement. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
What did he tell you specifically about the relationship between his mother and my client, Anthony McFarland?
To the best of my knowledge, he just explained, they fought some, but it wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't something that he noticed all the time.
How long had they been living together?
I don't know the extent. He said Mr. McFarland said they'd been in a relationship for about a year. I believe he had been living there for at least 6 months.
One second, Judge, 1 second.
No problem.
You were able to confiscate my client's vehicle. Did you find any indication of any blood in his vehicle?
We did not, no, sir.
Okay, and his vehicle was left at the mechanic shop.
Correct.
Is there any indication at any point in time that my client was driving the vehicle that was leased or owned by the deceased?
Not to my knowledge, no, sir.
And so there was nothing in her vehicle, there was no evidence in her vehicle that she had ever been in the vehicle after she had been shot. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
Was there any indication that she had been transported anywhere at any time?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know how long she and the 14-year-old had lived in the residence at Snellville?
I believe they've been there for about 10 years.
10 years, okay. So the 14-year-old and his mother, they've been there for about 10 years, but my client's only been there for about 6 months. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
The 14-year-old indicates that, yeah, they may have had some disagreements, but there was nothing crazy. Did anybody else, did any neighbors or anyone describe anything or see anything?
No, sir.
Did they describe anything or see anything in terms of prior dates where they may have been arguing or somebody may have been threatening somebody?
No, sir. All we know that there was some point that it was mentioned to us that by family members that the defendant had moved out of the home and moved in with a female across the street for a period of time and then moved back in.
Okay. So my client was staying with the decedent at one point in time, started living at somebody else's house and then moved back in with the decedent and her 14-year-old. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did the 14-year-old ever see a gun at the house? Did he ever see my client carrying a gun?
He did not, no, sir.
Did anybody ever indicate that they saw my client carrying a gun?
The only indication came from Johnny Magic, the kid's father. They said that he and the defendant had a tumultuous relationship as well whenever he would come to drop the kids off. He said that the defendant would go to his car and reach under his front seat as if he were going to get a gun, but he never saw a gun.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. No further questions. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Judge, I only have one. Detective Smith, was there anybody else in the house other than the defendant and the 3 children and the decedent between the time that she was last alive to the time that she was in the backyard?
No, ma'am.
That's all the questions I have, Judge.
Mr. Lewis?
I don't have any other questions based on that question, Judge.
Okay. May Detective Smith be excused?
I don't have any objection, Judge.
All right. State?
No objection, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Detective Smith. Any additional witnesses for the state?
No, ma'am.
All right, what about you, Mr. Lewis? Any witnesses or evidence you want to present?
Judge, I don't have any evidence, only argument.
Okay, go ahead.
Judge, obviously it's a I guess at best a circumstantial case. We have a person that has a relationship with my client who is dead in the backyard, naked with 3 gunshot wounds, but we really don't know where she was shot. Obviously, there's some speculation that she was shot, I guess, in the bedroom, and then part of the mattress was removed, but there's no evidence of how she may have been transported from the bedroom to the final resting place, because there's no evidence of any blood or anything from the bedroom to the final resting place. There's no gun. It's just, we really just don't know where she was shot. We know she probably wasn't shot in my client's car because they have the car, there's no blood. We know that she probably wasn't shot in her car, but there's no evidence well, first of all, there's no evidence she was shot in a home and taken outside. Then you have the next factor, which is there's no evidence that my client shot her and moved her to the final resting place. There's just no evidence. And there's nothing in the text messages or anyone else's surveillance video or anyone else's video with my client maybe having a gun. So even normally, Judge, and obviously you've been doing this for a minute, normally when there's a circumstantial case, you have some other, I'm gonna call it better circumstantial evidence. We have a defendant that's always with guns, that shooting guns, video of guns. There's no evidence that my client ever had a gun, let alone shot a gun. There's normally some back and forth on the text messages where they're talking real crazy to one another. You don't have that. You don't have anybody about to break up with anybody. You don't have any of the requisite things that you would expect to have in a circumstantial case leading up to this type of crime. So I would argue, even though there is some evidence, there's some circumstantial evidence to the extent that he has an association with the house that he might do it, you don't have the requisite circumstantial evidence that normally buttresses the circumstantial evidence. You don't have the acrimonious text messages, the photos and videos with the gun, the nastiness and the destruction of property the week before. You don't have any of that. You just have a normal relationship according to the 14-year-old, and then the person is dead. And then my client is sitting here because I'm assuming because she's naked, and they don't think the 14-year-old shot his own mother while she was naked. And here we are. So I would argue, Judge, ultimately it's not enough, and for that reason the charges should be dismissed.
Yes, ma'am.
Judge, I would disagree with Mr. Lewis. First, she's making breakfast and then she just disappears. Her phone is at the house, her car is at the house, everything she has is at the house, but she just disappeared into thin air. That doesn't make any sense, Judge. So that's not possible. The kids, he keeps asking the 14-year-old to go outside and straighten up the backyard or do something with the backyard. And the 14-year-old said he never asked me to do that. So I'm not really sure why he kept asking me to do that. He lied about the timing as far as being at the mechanic. He took a garbage bag full of stuff to a wood line, and it's likely that he lit it up and left. It's all on video as to him walking into the wood line and walking back out of the wood line, and then the fire department showing up. In addition, there's blood on his shoes, shoes that are associated with him. There is all kinds of video where he's asking the kids if they've seen their mom. He says he keeps texting her, but he knows the phone is in the house, so I'm not really sure why you would do that. Even though I understand that Mr. Lewis is saying, and there was nobody else there. I had asked Detective Smith, was there anybody else there? I mean, the ex-husband, baby daddy, whatever you want to call him, he wasn't there. All these people had other people who said they knew where they were. They weren't anywhere near that house. So unless this woman just disappeared into, and he tried to blame the 14-year-old for killing her. 14-year-old wasn't even out of his room at the time this happened. So, Judge, I would say even though at this point it is more circumstantial than not, I think it meets the standard based on the improbable cause.
Mr. Lewis, while I do agree that this is a circumstantial case, there's a couple things that I think establish at least a level of probable cause. One is that the victim was found naked and outside the home with 3 gunshot wounds. There was no weapon found around her, so she obviously didn't shoot herself. And the last video of her, I think Detective Smith said, being alive, she was with your client, and there's at least some presumptive shoes with what's presumed to be blood on them that are again linked back to your client. So I find that there's sufficient probable cause to bind the charges over as listed in the warrants.
Yes,
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Mr. McFarland, Mr. Lewis is going to explain to you what you can anticipate in terms of what's the next steps. and maybe give you some idea of when you can anticipate the next court proceeding and whether that next court proceeding is going to be in person or on video again, okay? At this point, we're not quite sure when the courthouses are going to open back up, but Mr. Lewis will be in touch with you and keep you apprised of that, okay?
And just so you're clear, Judge, I filed a bond motion on his behalf. I haven't been given a bond date yet, but that motion has been filed. I do understand, although you haven't mentioned it today, that you're not authorized to address bond.
Correct. I'm authorized, Mr. McFarland, to conduct the probable cause hearing, but because the nature of the felony murder charge, that's going to have to be heard by the Superior Court judge who would hear the rest of your case. And the way those judges are handling their hearings and motions, it kind of varies depending on the judge. So Mr. Lewis will be in touch with that judge's office. A lot of the judges have resumed having some hearings, including hearings on video. So some of it's getting started.
All right. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Okay, we're going to. Okay, let's see here. Do we have the interpreter?
He just stepped in. I'm gonna put that on this side. I'm gonna put the mask on first, right?
Did not have the headset for the interpreter? The interpreter's in there with you, Mr. Lewis?
No, he's not with me. He's in the adjoining room, Judge.
Okay.
He's probably just getting set up.
Okay.
Yeah. No, but I think it's on a different computer. Judge, do you need to send an invitation to the interpreter?
I thought we did. They said it was all one. The interpreter doesn't have the invite. They should have had the same invite. My invite said 4:29 prelims PM. Oh, they're looking for it now? Okay. I think they're working on it, Mr. Lewis.
That's fine, Judge. That's fine.
Calendar. Do we need to send it again? Yeah. Oh, I see. I resent the invite. Okay, the interpreter's computer is shut off or something, so they have to restart it.
Okay.
Oh, let's see here. Okay, there's Detective Carter's here. Oh, there we go. They're joining. So let me see here. Let's start video. Okay, do we have the interpreter? Oh, there we go. I see you. I see you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I can hear you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mute you on our end. And Mr. Lewis, do you want to test and see if Mr. Lewis and his client can hear you?
Mr. Lewis?
I can hear you. Say something in Spanish, so see if he can hear you. He said he can't hear him.
Okay. It says I'm muted.
Okay. No. I think he's listening to you through the ear set.
Is the headset
Uh,
working?
Yeah. Just say something else in Spanish. Can you say something else?
¿Me escucha ahora? He cannot. No. Cannot hear me. Am I doing something wrong on my end or?
No. Hold on. I think it's the equipment.
The headset might not be working.
Go ahead. Say something else in Spanish.
Aló. Apenas escuche algo, me dice. ¿Escuche? ¿Aló?
Can you hear?
¿Me
Okay.
oye?
No me escucho bien.
No. Aló.
Just hold on. Yeah, I think it's equipment. Until it's not. Like marriage. It's awesome until it's not. Go ahead, Nelson, say something in Spanish.
Aló, ¿me escucha?
No, ya lo escucho en la
Might be the earpiece. And not the, yeah.
Now? Hello?
No. They're gonna check out the equipment, the earpiece for him. They're gonna check it
By the
out.
way, do I have to mute my end so that it doesn't interfere with?
Well, what we'll do if we can get the earpiece, the translation, the earpiece is working, is then we'll mute you on the video. And then he can listen by the earpiece.
Hello? 1, 2, 3. Right. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. So I'm set to go, but there's something wrong with that end. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Hello. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing. Hello. Try 40. 40. Testing 1, 2, 3. Got it? I think we're, hello? Testing, 1, 2, 3. I think we're almost there, guys. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing 1. Okay. Okay, so we're good.
Yeah, I got it. That's fine. We'll figure it out.
No va a escuchar hasta que esto no, hasta que.
¿Me escuchan? ¿Me escuchan?
Okay, just mute yourself on the computer, or do you want me to mute him?
Well, let me swear Mr. Zapata in first. That's the
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm that you will truly and accurately translate from English to Spanish and Spanish to English the proceedings today to the best of your ability under the penalty of perjury?
I do.
And state your name for the record and your certification.
Nelson Zapata, state certified Spanish interpreter.
Okay, Mr. Zapata, I'm gonna go ahead and mute you on the Zoom video. If you need us to repeat anything, then just give us a little hand signal, wave or something so we can slow down. Mr. Lewis, I believe you indicated you may need to put something on the record or address something.
Well, I want to make sure the system works first. So just mute the interpreter, then we'll see.
I did.
Okay, good. Okay, so Nelson, say something to the client.
Yo lo escucho, pero muy despacio. Lo escucho, pero muy bajito.
Was the battery in there? Oh.
Hello? Okay. We got better audio now.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. Put it back on mute, Judge.
Okay.
Okay, good. Nelson, say something to the client. Make sure he can hear you.
Sí, lo escucho muy despacio, pero lo escucho. Sí.
Fantastic. Respectfully, Judge, before we begin the prelim, and I'm grateful for everybody's patience. The interpreter who's actually here today, and I went to visit my client, Santos Amayo Bonilla, on April the 14th. We had a conversation with him a little bit about the evidence in the case, and he indicated that he might want to speak to the judge about his representation. So that's what I wanted to make sure that we address today.
Okay. What specifically did he want to talk about? Does he plan to hire? I guess.
I don't know the answer to that, Judge.
Okay, Mr. Amaya Bonilla. We can talk about what you want to do in terms of representation or having an attorney represent you. What's the issue?
Sí, quiero que un abogado me represente para que me puedan dar otro abogado, la corte.
Tiene que hablar más duro, señor.
Que si la corte me puede dar otro abogado. Sí, quiero que otro abogado.
I'm asking the court if they can provide me a new attorney.
On what basis, sir?
¿Por qué motivo, señor?
El motivo que quiero que otro abogado me represente es porque la razón, él no me dejó terminar mi declaración, me mandó para la celda. Entonces, si no he terminado una declaración yo bien, no podemos entendernos. Necesito
I want another attorney for the simple reason that he did not allow me to finish my reasoning for why I felt I was wrongly accused. We can't seem to communicate. Siga?
Sí, necesito otro abogado que me escuche para rendir bien mi declaración, cómo son las cosas. Está
I
pasando
just
con
need
mi-
another attorney so that we can understand each other well and we can communicate better.
Well, sir, the way this works with having an attorney appointed to represent you is that you are, you know, the attorney that the court chooses is who is appointed and assigned to represent you. If you want to have an attorney that you feel like you like better personally, is more agreeable to you, then you're going to have to hire that person with your own money, or your family's going to have to hire.
Señor, esto funciona de la siguiente manera. El señor Lewis es el abogado que ha sido designado para representarlo para su defensa. Si usted no le gusta o quiere que lo represente otro abogado, usted va a tener que recaudar los fondos para pagar usted mismo para otro abogado que lo represente.
As for the attorney who is appointed to represent you, Mr. Lewis, he's one of the top attorneys in our county. I've seen him win cases that no one thought was winnable. He's very experienced. He is good at what he does. I'm sure Ms. Odin will say the same. You couldn't get a better attorney in terms of a court-appointed counsel.
Señor, en cuanto al abogado que usted tiene ahora, el señor Lewis, él es uno de los mejores abogados que tenemos en el condado. Yo lo he visto ganar casos que muchos pensaron que no era posible de ganar. Todos estarían de acuerdo con eso.
Now, you can hire your own attorney, and that person you can retain that person at any point that you feel you have the funds and they're willing to take your case.
Usted puede contratar cualquier otro abogado si quiere, en cualquier momento, si usted piensa que usted puede obtener los fondos para contratar un nuevo abogado, lo puede hacer.
Can I interrupt here? And just ask the interpreter to interpret form. What the judge says is you can stop the hearing today and you can retain a lawyer.
I'm sorry. Can I get you to speak louder?
I'm sorry. We can stop the hearing today and he can hire a lawyer, or we can go forward today and then as he tries to put the money together, the lawyer can come and replace me at any time.
Correct.
Podemos hacer dos cosas, señor. Podemos parar el proceso de la audiencia y usted puede tratar de contratar otro abogado, o podemos continuar con la audiencia y mientras tanto usted ve cómo va a contratar un abogado, si es que lo puede contratar, y en cualquier momento en el futuro podemos parar el proceso para usted contratar ese nuevo abogado. ¿Cuál quiere hacer?
Yo no tengo dinero para contratar otro abogado, yo no tengo familia aquí, yo estoy solo.
I don't have any money to hire another attorney. I don't have any family here. I'm all by myself.
Well, the court is not in a position to just reappoint attorneys or reassign cases because defendants don't like how they communicate. And if there's an issue with technical equipment, like the microphone not working or something like that, the court is, that's our responsibility to fix. But because you feel like you want someone that gets along better with you, that's not the court's responsibility.
Señor, no es de la responsabilidad de la corte buscarle a usted otro abogado simplemente por el motivo que usted no le gusta a este señor. Si hubiera un problema técnico o alguna otra cosa más importante, trataríamos de conseguir uno, pero por el simple motivo de que usted no le gusta a este señor, no lo podemos hacer.
No es que no me guste. La razón es de que el día que fue a verme, cuando tuvimos la conversación con él, no me dejó terminar de que yo...
It's not that I didn't like him. It's just that when I was trying to explain my case the other day when I had the conversation with him, he wouldn't let me finish my story.
Okay, well, you will have another opportunity to speak with your attorney about the remainder of your story. But for purposes of the hearing today, I'm not appointing anyone new. If you want a new attorney, you can hire someone with your own money.
Usted puede terminar de explicarle lo que le quiera explicar a su abogado. Por ahora no estoy dispuesta a asignarle a usted un nuevo abogado, señor.
Bueno, entonces me gustaría que me escuchara y tuviera el tiempo suficiente, que me diera suficiente tiempo para explicarle, porque yo lo que le expliqué ese día que fue.
Well, I think that if I could just be allowed enough time to state my case, then I'm willing to go along with that.
So, sir, we're just having a probable cause hearing today. You can have as much time as you need after that to speak to your attorney. And you can take as much time as you need to hire someone else if you so choose.
Solamente tenemos una audiencia de motivos fundados hoy, señor. Después de esto, usted le pueden dar todo el tiempo que usted piense necesario para explicarle lo que usted le quiera explicar a su abogado.
So let me get this right, Judge. The request for continuance to prepare a better argument for the new attorney, is that denied?
Correct. We're having the hearing today. All the parties are ready, and this was specially set for this hearing.
Okay. Podemos oírlo a él hoy y esto fue programado para el día de hoy para este mismo motivo.
¿Lo pueden escuchar a él? Dice. Perdón, me gustaría que él me hiciera otra visita para que podamos hablar bien, para que se pueda poner de acuerdo conmigo, ayudarme en mi defensa de mi caso.
I'd like to have us another visit so that I can state my case and I can explain, and that way he can properly prepare my defense.
Sir, this is just the probable cause hearing. This is not the trial. Defenses are not presented at probable cause hearings.
Señor, esto es una audiencia de motivos fundados, no es un juicio. Defensas no se presentarán durante una audiencia de esta clase.
You will still have time to speak to your attorney about your defenses and maybe even do a better job once you hear what the state's evidence is today.
Usted aún tendrá tiempo para hablar con su abogado acerca de sus defensas, que tal vez pueda hacer un mejor trabajo después de que él oiga la evidencia que van a presentar el día de hoy.
Okay, we're going to proceed with the hearing, Mr. Amaya.
Vamos a seguir para adelante, señor, con esta audiencia, señor Amaya.
Mr. Lewis, you requested this probable cause hearing, and so do you waive any proceedings in person and agree to proceed by video?
Judge.
Okay, state also agrees?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, this is the probable cause hearing. The case of State of Georgia versus Edgardo Amaya Bonilla.
Edgardo Amaya Bonilla.
Warrant. Sorry, let me mute the interpreter back. 20W05113. I'm sorry, 05135. That is one count of rape. 05136. That warrant is also one count of rape. 05137. One count of rape. 05138. One count of sodomy. And 05139, one count of sodomy. Mr. Lewis, do you waive formal reading of the warrants?
Judge, I did have a chance to review the charges, and I had a chance to review the charges with my client on April the 14th, and I do waive.
Okay. Are you ready to proceed with the probable cause hearing?
I am.
All right, state's ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can swear in your witness.
Okay. Good. Let's see. Got to get to her. There we go. Ma'am, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before this court be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And would you can put your hand down now. Would you please state your name for the court?
Hold on.
Detective.
Hold on. I'm sorry.
Is that it?
Okay. He may have some more technical difficulty. I'm just gonna ask the deputy to step in for 1 second, Judge, to make sure he can hear.
Nelson say something.
Hello?
Yeah, we're gonna need to get the other ones. These guys.
You remember this morning, Judge? Remember this morning when I asked Judge Bloom? I said to Judge Bloom, how'd it go with the interpreter? And she said it was smooth.
Last time it did.
That was the one question I had for this morning.
By the way, can I turn up the volume?
Well, never a dull moment, Lawrence. Never a dull moment.
This is as far as I can go with this.
You got different ones?
Okay.
Give us 1 second to leave the other. Give him one.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing.
Oh, yeah.
Testing.
I can hear that.
1, 2, 3. Testing.
I can hear that. Okay.
Okay. Are we good?
Yeah.
We're good, right? Can I take it?
I can hear you.
Yeah, we're
All right.
all good.
Okay, I'm gonna mute. Mr.
Okay.
State, you can go ahead, Ms. Holding.
Okay, I'm just going to start over, Judge. Ma'am, would you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And would you please state your name for the court?
Detective.
Okay.
And where do you work, ma'am?
Gwinnett County Police Special Victims Unit.
How long have you worked for the police department?
Going on 4 years now.
Are you post-certified?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have an opportunity to come in contact with Santos Amaya Bonilla?
No, I have not.
Okay. But you investigated this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can you tell us what led you to investigate this case?
Yes, ma'am. On March 29th, 2020, officers were dispatched to 885 Indian Trail, Lilburn Road, a Mexican grocery store located in Gwinnett County. The manager, Walter Vasquez, had contacted police and stated that his employee was experiencing domestic violence in her home, and he thought that someone should talk to her. He stated that she was afraid to talk to due to Mr. Bonilla, and that also that she was undocumented. Officers arrived on scene and they spoke to Maria. They stated that, or Maria told them that Mr. Bonilla was hitting her and forcing her to have sex with him the past weekend, and she didn't feel safe. She, after speaking to officers, left the grocery store and went to stay with a family member, and later obtained a temporary protection order against Mr. Bonilla. Later that night, Mr. Bonilla was arrested due to him coming back to the store and confronting an employee about the whereabouts of Maria, because she left the store and went to live with a family member. There was a previous call into 911 from Mr. Vasquez prior to the call where he was arrested, stated that he had attempted to force himself into the kitchen trying to find Maria, and he was circling the store. Gwinnett County Police set it up a check as often as possible in reference to him, and then it ended once he was ultimately arrested. I was assigned the case the following week, to which I made contact. I went to the grocery store to speak to Maria. She was no longer there. She had a new phone number, and the manager of the grocery store, Walter Vasquez, got me in contact with her. She is only Spanish speaking, and the interview was translated by Officer Valle, who originally arrested Mr. Bonilla. I spoke to Maria, and she stated that there were 4 different incidences, one which she stated occurred 2 weeks prior, but couldn't give much detail about the date, the location, stuff like that, because it had occurred in the car. She stated that they had been fighting recently because of the COVID situation, and she was getting off work later. And she stated that on March 24th, on a Tuesday, he came into the store, which was common. He would come in and speak to her throughout the day while she was working and check up on her. She stated on the 24th, he saw her speaking to a male employee in the store and got upset. She stated he came back a few other times throughout that day until he ultimately picked her up at nighttime and around 9 p.m. She got in the vehicle, and she stated that he struck her and pulled out his gun. He struck her with his hand on the chest, and then pulled out his gun and stated, "What are you doing? You better be quiet or this is going to be your punishment," while pointing the gun at her. She stated he laid the gun down while it was still facing her, and it was between him and her purse and her. She stated that he then drove them home to their residence, which was approximately 5 minutes away. And they got to the house. When they walked in the house, he turned the TV up really loud and told her to be quiet. He told her to go get in the shower, all of this while holding his firearm in his hand. She described the firearm as a black handgun similar to the one that I was carrying. She stated, or similar to what police was carrying. She stated that when she came back into the room, he was laying naked on top of the covers and instructed her to do a 69. She said she didn't know what 69 meant, but then he told her that she needed to get on top of her. He got on top of her, and that he put his penis there, and he began performing oral sex on her. She stated that he still had the firearm laying on the bed, and she was in fear that he would shoot her, since he previously told her that would be her punishment. She stated that she didn't want to do it. She told him no, and then she was only licking his penis. She stated he told her that was incorrect, and then told her to put his penis in her mouth and continue to suck on it. She stated he did that for a little while, and she thought he was performing oral sex on her vagina, but it began to hurt, and she said she was not familiar. She didn't know what he was using down there, but it was very painful. But his face was down there. She stated that he then got up, put the gun to her chest, and stated, I will kill you, stop playing with me. Then he got on top of her and had carnal knowledge with his penis going inside of her vagina, and had sex with her until he finished. After that, she just laid there, and they both went to sleep. The following day, she stated he did the same thing. He picked her up from work, or not the following day, I apologize. On Saturday, the 28th, he picked her up from work, and it was a similar situation. He was angry in the car, and then he had the firearm. She knew he carried it in the center console of the vehicle. He stated, "You keep playing with me, keep playing with me. Tonight's going to be the night I kill you." They went home. He did the same thing, turned the TV up loud, except this time he told her to get undressed. He went down, sniffed her vagina, smelled her vagina, and said, "You need to go get in the shower." She went and got in the shower. He came back, was laying on the bed, had the firearm next to him as well. This time he told her, she used a Spanish term that myself and the interpreter was unfamiliar with. She later explained that he told her to get on her hands and knees with her face on the bed and then her buttocks in the air. She stated that he was forcing his penis inside of her anus and it wouldn't go, and then she was crying, "Please stop." She then stated he stopped when it began to bleed. He turned her over and she was laying on her back, and then he began to have carnal knowledge with her vagina, his penis inside of her vagina, until he finished. She stated then he got on top of her the whole time he's holding her hands on her chest while he's having sex with her. He said that she then grabbed the gun, put his knees on her chest and put the gun in her mouth and said, "You thought I was playing with you. Do you believe me now?" She stated that he stayed there and kept saying things until she said she started to black out due to his knees being on her chest. She stated that then he stopped when he realized that she was going in and out of consciousness. He put the gun down and began to hold her and said, "I love you, I love you, I love you. Please don't leave. Please don't leave. I love you." Then he stopped. The following morning, which was a Sunday morning on the 29th, he did the same. Well, he asked her, "Hey, we're going to have sex." She said, "I don't want to." At that point, he stated, "You don't have a choice." He had the firearm still next to the bed, and then he proceeded to have sex with her, and she said she tried to get up and he did not let her. She stated that they drove to the grocery store that morning, and prior to him dropping her off, he asked, "Do you still love me?" And she said no. She stated he didn't have any kind of reaction and it was normal. That's when the police were called, and then she went to live with the family member. She said she never got any of her items from the house. She just went to live with the family member. I also spoke with employees of the grocery store, one being, her name is Ida. She's the manager over the meat department where Maria worked. She stated that Maria often confided in her and told her about what was going on. She stated that Sunday morning when she came in, she was having a panic attack, turning white, saying that she was in fear for her life. She didn't know what to do, and that she almost passed out, but they threw oil on her to help wake her up. And at that point is when Walter called police. Ida said that she had previous encounters with Bonilla coming into the store and also confronting another employee. We later figured out his name was Sergio. She stated that he often came in and left, and then the day that he was arrested, he had tried to force himself into the grocery or back into the meat department, pushing her out of the way. She stated he eventually left after she told him that Maria wasn't there. I then spoke to Sergio, who stated that he was familiar with Bonilla. He often came into the store. Initially, Sergio was hesitant to talk to me out of fear because he said that he was scared of Bonilla because he had previously confronted him inside of the grocery store with an additional male. He didn't remember the day. He said it was a week during the week prior.
I'm sorry, who is he? Who is he? He confronted who?
Sergio, Bonilla confronted Sergio with another unidentified male. I apologize. The store has an area with ding-ding machines. They're like slot machines, and the meat department is right next to it. Sergio stated that Bonilla motioned for him to come over, and he went over and he said, "Who is Maria talking to in the grocery store?" Sergio said he just started laughing because he thought it was a joke because he knew Bonilla was Maria's boyfriend. He said, he then asked, he said, "Do you think this is a game? I'm not playing." Sergio said he felt weird and walked away. Later that night, Ida advised Sergio not to go out the front door because he knew that Bonilla was in the parking lot of the grocery store waiting for Maria to get off work. Sergio said he said it was fine. He thought everything was okay, so he went out the front entrance. He said when he walked out, Bonilla yelled to him to come over to the car and to get in the vehicle. He kept saying, "Get in the car, get in the car." He said at that point, Bonilla said, "Get in the car," continued yelling at him. At that point, Bonilla tried to walk away, and Sergio backed up the vehicle, following him with the car, rolled down the passenger window, and then opened his center console and presented a firearm. and stated, "Do you want me to kill you? You want me to kill you? This is not a game." He then presented a machete and stated, "You want me to cut your head off? Do you want me to cut your head off?" At that point, a cashier named Nicholas, who we also interviewed, came out and saw them yelling at each other, asked if everything was okay. At that point, Bonilla closed the window and went and parked again and waited for Maria to get off, and Sergio was able to walk away. We talked to the Mr. Nicholas, and he confirmed what Sergio told us. And Sergio stated, or Nicholas stated, that he remembered it was on a Tuesday, which was the same day that Maria stated that Bonilla saw her speaking to a male employee inside the grocery store. I also asked Maria why she didn't call police. She stated the same reasons that Walter told police. She stated that she also knew that even if he got locked up, he would come back into the country because he had been deported to El Salvador multiple times. And then afterwards, I pulled his criminal history, and that was confirmed. Officer Valle, while she was doing the interviews, translating the interviews, she stated that when Bonilla was arrested, they did not find the firearm, but they did find a machete in his vehicle. And the vehicle was ultimately released to the registered owner.
Okay. So how did you equate the person that's sitting in the courtroom with Mr. Bonilla? How do you know that that's the same person?
The Officer Valle arrested him that night, and also Maria identified him. Employees at the store who were familiar with him identified him, and he was in the jail system. Okay, so they give him a lineup, or how did they do it? He was at the store at the time of his arrest, and then Officer Valle, who checked his ID prior to him, confirmed that was him in jail track. Okay, so he was at the store when he was arrested, and the employees verified that that's who this person was that was threatening Maria. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Did anybody ever see any bruises on Maria? No, officer said that she didn't have any bruises on her. She said, when I asked her about that, she said he would always strike her with an open hand, and that she's made the statement that he was very smart with his abuse because he had previously abused what she said was his wife in the past. She did go to the hospital, Avid Health Center, on March 31st. I was able to obtain those records, but the doctor stated that the injuries were not significant enough to do any like CT scans or anything like that. Okay. Let's see. And to your knowledge, what's their relationship? How long had they known each other? They were boyfriend and girlfriend. They lived together, and they had been together, from my understanding, a couple months. Okay. And to your knowledge, are there any children in common? No. And I presume Maria's over the age of 18? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so they lived together for a few months. And did she tell you when this started happening, or how long after he had moved in with her, or how long after she'd known him that these incidents started happening? She told me the first time that he ever struck her was 2 weeks prior to police coming out. She couldn't remember the exact date, and she stated that it occurred in a parking lot after her getting off of work, but she didn't remember where the parking lot was because she wasn't familiar with the area. Okay. And was 24th of March the first time he had ever forcibly had sex with her? Yes. To your knowledge? To my knowledge. Okay. And let's see, this was in Gwinnett County, the store's in Gwinnett County, her house is in Gwinnett County? Yes, ma'am. Okay, just making sure I check that little box. It's 48 Burns Road. I'm sorry? Her house is 4853 Burns Road. Okay. And the store is where? 885 Indian Trail, Lilburn Road. And both of those are in Gwinnett County, right? Yes, ma'am. Okay. Okay. And did the officer speak with him when he was arrested? Yes, but not in regards to the sexual encounters. They asked him why he was at the store, and he said that he was trying to find his woman. Okay. Did he say anything else to your knowledge? Not to my knowledge. I just reviewed it in regards to his arrest that night.
Okay. And had you made any attempt to speak with him about the sexual abuse, or?
I attempted to contact and set something up because I believe he was at Irwin Detention Center. And after that, I was told that he was not going to be sent back to Gwinnett because they weren't doing pickups. And then I found out that he was transported back here when I received this subpoena. So I haven't had a chance to speak to him.
Okay. 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 I don't have anything further at the moment.
Mr. Lewis?
Thank you, Judge. Is it Officer Carter, Detective Carter? Tell me how I should address you.
It's Detective Carter now.
Detective Carter, fantastic. Detective Carter. I want to understand how my client went from being free to being arrested. It doesn't sound like he was arrested on these warrants. It sounds like he was arrested for something else. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, on what day? Let's start there. On what day was he arrested?
He was arrested on March 29th.
March 29th. And he was arrested at the grocery store. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Now, if I understand you correctly, the victim in the case had not returned to the apartment on the 28th?
The 29th.
Okay.
She didn't have a car and she didn't drive. So on the 29th, after speaking to police, her family member came and picked her up, and she moved in with the family.
What time was that?
It was early afternoon. I can't recall the exact time.
So let's say about 4 o'clock. Let's just use it as a reference point. What time does my client arrive?
The first time the call went out, when Walter Vasquez called police for the police to monitor the area, that was around 7 p.m. No, sorry, 8:30 p.m. Because it was right.
8:30 p.m.
Yeah, it was right before she was about to get off of work.
Okay, 8:30 p.m. So let me go back. I put 4 o'clock. I put a pin in 4 o'clock. Did a better time come to mind to you about when she left her shift?
Yeah, I recall it was early afternoon, like noon or 1 o'clock.
Okay, good. So 1 o'clock, she's out of there. My client arrives about 8:30 and they call the police.
Yes.
Okay, do the police arrive and give him a criminal trespass, or what happens at that first encounter? Do you know?
The first encounter, he wasn't there. He had come into the store and was trying to get into the kitchen because he thought that they were lying to her about Maria not being at the store. So that's when he encountered Ida. Excuse me. Sorry, my sergeant just called me. He encountered Ida and tried to force his way into the kitchen.
Okay, so he was just trying to walk. He was just trying to walk into the kitchen.
Yes, and they told her they wasn't there, and he kept trying to get in.
Okay, is there video of the inside of the store?
Walter said that he's having issues with it.
Okay, so there may not be video. How many people explained that my client was trying to push his way into the kitchen? How many people, according to your investigation?
It was Walter Vasquez, Ida, there's another manager, I can't recall her name, and then Sergio.
Okay, so at least 3, maybe 4 people that see my client at 8:30.
Yes.
He then leaves and then he comes back, is that right?
Yes.
When he comes back, about what time is it then?
After 9 o'clock, I believe.
After 9 o'clock. Police then arrest him during that visit to the grocery store, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, and what's he doing prior to the police arrival that second time inside the store?
Walter stated that he was parking in the parking lot across the street, and then he was circling the parking lot.
Okay, like he was doing surveillance.
I guess you could say.
Okay, all right, good. So he's arrested at that time for what? Criminal trespass, for what?
I believe it was battery, driving without a license, and disorderly conduct. I don't have those warrants in front of me.
Okay,
that's what's on the GCIC, Lawrence.
That's fine. Battery, what's the other one? Driving without a license?
And disorderly conduct.
And disorderly conduct. So he's arrested and he's taken to the Gwinnett County Jail, and then is he taken to ICE detention?
I believe so. I don't know what the logistics were behind the scene on that.
Okay, and I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, just the part that you know. We know he's arrested, and then I think you tried to see him in ICE detention, is that right? Or you tried to visit him in ICE detention?
Yes, I contacted Irwin Detention Center because down there, and I was supposed to be recontacted because we were going to try to set up like a video conference or something for us to talk, and I never received a call back until I got the subpoena.
Okay, so he had made bond on the simple battery, was about to be deported, or the process to be deported, and they shipped him back to Gwinnett where you took the warrants, is that right?
Yes, they shipped him back due to my warrants.
Okay, I just wanted to understand that. Thank you very much. In terms of the length of the relationship between my client and the girlfriend, do you know how long they had been in a relationship?
I don't know the exact date. Maria described it as them knowing each other prior to, and then she said that they had been living together for a couple months. The residence they were currently staying in, they had been there for a few weeks, and before they started dating, she mentioned something about Bonilla asking her brother for them to be able to be together.
Okay, so according to Maria, Bonilla knows her brother, is that right?
Yes.
Have you spoken to her brother yet?
Just to get his address and stuff.
Okay, has he indicated that his sister has said anything about the person that has sought his permission raping her? Has he said anything about that? The brother. Has the brother said, the guy that said, could he date my sister, I've now found out from my sister's raping my sister. Has the brother said that?
He stated that he knew she was being abused. He didn't go into detail about what the abuse was, but that's the reason why he came to get her.
Okay, I got it. So when you say family member, the brother came to get her.
Yes.
Okay. She indicated, I think it was in the second incident, March 28th, 2020, that my client had attempted some type of anal sex which caused her to bleed. That was your testimony, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Was she examined, a rape kit, or any sort of examination of vaginal and anus area?
She went to Abbott Health Center on her own, by herself on March 31st. The doctor stated that he could not do a rape kit on her due to the time frame in which that had lapsed. Because that incident occurred on the 29th and this was the 31st. I can't speak to as to why she didn't do it or anything like that. I did contact Mosaic, Georgia, and attempted to set up something for her to be brought in to have a sexual assault kit done with the same nurse at Mosaic, Georgia. And they stated that due to the COVID situation and it not being an acute situation, it would be probably a month to a month and a half prior to her being able to get in. And they stated that they don't normally do, I'm trying to think of the term, they don't do sexual assaults on adults after a certain time period normally.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, and I probably should slow down, let the interpreter catch up. No rape kit was done, and in your effort to do one, you were told it's probably going to be a little bit of a problem because of the virus. Is that right?
They stated that it would be about a month, and then I was told that they don't usually do them at that extended period of a time on an adult.
Okay. If I understood you correctly, also the alleged victim had a panic attack on a Sunday morning. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
And I'm trying to figure out, was that the same Sunday that the brother came to get her?
Yes, and the same Sunday that police came out to the scene.
Okay. So there's the rape incident from the 24th, the rape sodomy from March the 28th, and on the 29th, when she goes to work at noon, she has a panic attack and her brother comes and gets her.
Correct.
And then we have the rest of the drama with the kitchen and the circling and all that, the evening of the 29th. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much, Detective Carter.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions from the state?
No, ma'am.
May Detective Carter be excused?
That's fine.
I don't have any objection, Judge.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Detective Carter.
Judge.
All right. Any additional witnesses from the state?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Lewis, any argument?
Judge, I don't have any argument about the 24th, March 24th, and March 28th, because I heard that testimony. There is another warrant number 20W05137, which talks about March 29th. I may have missed that, but I didn't recall any rape conversation about the morning of March 29th. Did I miss that?
I think so, because if I recall correctly, Detective Carter testified that they got up the next morning and he said that he was going to have sex with her and she said, no, I don't want to. And he said, well, you don't have a choice.
I got it. I remember that. Yes, I got it. I remember that. Okay. All right. Judge, obviously, there's no witness here for you to test anybody's credibility. This is the story that was told. And so for purposes of probable cause hearing, we will submit that.
Okay. Anything on behalf of the state? I think we cleared up the 29th.
Yeah, we'll submit, Judge.
Okay. All right, based on the evidence I've heard, I find that there is sufficient probable cause to bind the charges over as listed. Mr. Amaya Bonilla, understand that just because I find probable cause, this is not a determination of guilt or innocence. You now have some more information and some more detail. Your attorney has that information in detail and can follow up and talk to you about possible defenses, your own witnesses, evidence, those sorts of things, okay? So he'll talk to you about that and give you some idea of what you can expect for the next hearing and going forward, okay?
Okay. Una cuestión antes de terminar.
One question before we go.
Okay.
Yo a esa mujer la traté bien todo el tiempo, nunca la traté
Hable más duro, señor.
A esa mujer todo el tiempo la traté bien, nunca la traté mal. Hay videos en la tienda donde yo iba a almorzar todos los días que ella salía de almuerzo. Ella me llamaba por teléfono para que fuera a almorzar con ella.
I've always treated this woman with utmost respect. There's plenty of video surveillance from the store where I was nice to her.
Okay, well, you can, Mr. Lewis is going to follow up on that, okay?
El señor Lewis va a hablar contigo sobre eso, señor.
Okay, quiero que nada más que vea todos los videos de 2 meses de esa tienda, de 2 meses.
No. Everything is being recorded. You don't need to talk about your case to everyone involved here.
Señor, todo se está grabando para las actas. No tiene que mencionar su caso. El señor Lewis él va a hablar con usted más tarde, ¿ok?
Correcto.
Okay. Thank you.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you. All right. I think that ends it. Okay. Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you, Judge.
Okay, we'll get these, it's recorded, and I think Judge Bloom will upload the videos and send them out shortly, okay?
Thank you, Judge.
All right, thank you. Let's see here, we're gonna